So the topic tonight is safety simplified. What can I do today? Which is quite applicable. As we get into it, you'll understand a little bit more as to why. So we are going to start off with a poll question. And this one, interestingly enough, is not wanting to come up either. Well, not quite sure why on earth it's not doing it tonight. Oh, perhaps Jody, are you able to launch poll question number 1? Okay, so we seem to be having some technical issues. So, oh, can everyone see the poll question? I hope. So the first poll question is primarily, who performs the most dangerous, hazardous, difficult tasks on your farm? So these are anonymous. So please just select one. We'll give you a few seconds. So again, unfortunately, I'm not seeing the results of the poll question. Hope those kids, there we go. Okay, thank you. So it's primarily yourselves. So that's kind of what I expected. You know, a bit of a spread, but primarily it's yourselves, spouse, employee, children, parent, or sibling. Okay, so we can close that one and we will move on to poll question number 2. Okay, if you can go ahead and launch that one, please. If the person who performs the most dangerous, hazardous, difficult task were seriously injured, who would take it over? Who would do that task instead? Again, completely anonymous, so just go ahead and select that and we'll give you a few seconds. There's a method to the madness and it will go into context shortly. So we should be good to show the results from that poll question. So either you would take it over, one of your employees would take it over, you know, spouse, parent, sibling, someone else would end up taking over that really dangerous, hazardous task. So while you might think it's okay for you to do something, chances are if that's the way you've always done it, that person who steps into your shoes is going to do it that exact same way. And that's not necessarily a good thing if you don't have a lot of safety measures and stuff in place. So we can close that one out. And we'll move on to the next one. So why did I bring that up? Because we can see here from a CASA report who is dying on our farms. And it's you. Primarily, it's you. And if it's not you, it's one of your children or an employee. And then we have visitors, other relatives, and even neighbors. So that's kind of scary to look at. At least it is very much so to me. And finally, this will be the last poll question number 3. Someone who has been working on the farm for a long time and has a lot of experience doing these tasks is less at risk of being injured or killed. What do you think? All right. So if it looks like everybody's kind of had a chance to answer, we can throw the results of that one up. So it's pretty split. That's interesting. That's good. So if we close that out, we will see in the next slide, fatalities by age groups. So while it's quite high from ages 1 to 9 on the farm, we notice kind of an increase as we go up in age, peaking at around 50 to about the 80-year age range. So at about 50, you're still very active on the farm. Should have a lot of experience, and yet these are the people who are primarily dying. So there's a lot of factors surrounding that, naturally, but we can't assume that just because we've done something a long time a certain way, that it's always going to be okay. And this kind of proves that. So 89% of these fatalities are males. However, we should note that this data is from 1990 to 2009, so it's a little bit older. And very likely, I wouldn't expect the numbers to necessarily change, but I would expect to see an increase of female fatalities on the farm, just because if I think back to the 1990s where my grandparents were still really active in the farm, my grandfather would have been out, more of the machinery and equipment. My grandfather primarily with childcare and, the more house related stuff. My mother was pretty split between equipment, animals, and farm. And my sister and myself were kind of primarily equipment and with the animals. So it would be nice to see some newer data. So when are these injuries occurring? They're starting to increase now. So it's kind of the lowest, it's lowest in January and then starts to kind of creep up. We get a bit of a jump in May, and it is highest through August, September. So 65% of the fatalities occur between May and October. While a lot of the data that we use is from Canada as a whole, this is specific for Alberta. And I did choose that because our seasons are a little bit different than what they might have in Southern Ontario and BC. So we can really see here, we're getting into that time where we're going to start seeing bad things happen as we get busier. And I don't think anyone's too surprised by that, but it's definitely something to be mindful of. So you're probably wondering, how are these happening then? Well, here's a very colorful chart explaining that to you. So we have it kind of divided up by season. Again, this is from a care report and specific to Alberta. Machinery runovers are quite high throughout the year, regardless of season. Rollovers peak in the summer, entanglements in the winter. The animal related stuff is higher, obviously, in the spring and summer. So if there's kind of something that catches your eye here, you can easily find the color to see kind of where it goes up and down. I would be so curious to know what the other injuries are. That's a really high number. And it would just be interesting to see a little bit better data. So what injuries are occurring? So one of the benefits of having WCB involved over the past couple of years is that we can at least see some injury numbers, not necessarily fatalities, but injuries. So we can see falls are number 1, followed by animal contact, struck by object, overexertion, contact with objects, equipment, bodily reaction, exertion, exposure to harmful substances. So this is great. What we are not seeing in this particular report are, the serious injuries, the more disabling injuries. But we do get to see at least some injuries. So according to WCB, as of February 2021, agriculture has the second highest rate of lost time injury claims of all industries in Alberta. That's pretty high, and something we're going to change. What else are we not seeing? Well, for many reasons, we're lacking good numbers on non-fatal farm injuries. Though there was a 2016 estimate of about 5,000 serious injuries and 50,000 minor injuries on a farm in Alberta per year. Occupational diseases have not really been tracked. So your respiratory diseases like farmer's lung, hearing loss, skin cancer, these things that we're all pretty familiar with, we know people with them. We don't have a lot of really good numbers behind that. So what is AgSafe Alberta doing about this? Well, we spent some time developing farmers care. So these are life-saving opportunities on the farm that just take a few minutes to kind of go through. It's created to make it easy for you to identify common hazards on the farm and prevent them from becoming incidents. In order to protect ourselves and others from the hazard, we need to know what's there. We need to identify it first. And this is a really good tool to do that. So you can go to take11.ca, go online to the site to learn more about it. It's designed to have easy to understand information, videos, diagrams, just easy things that you can kind of relate to your farm and do about it. I highly encourage you to do the Take 11 challenge. Scroll down to the bottom of it, complete the information, and we'll send you something awesome. Please, please, please do that. So what can we start doing today? If you go to Farmers Care and you start to go through it and identify kind of what the hazards are and pick off the ones that are present on your farm, and then combine it with Stop, Think, Act. If you've been in other industries, you're probably quite familiar with this. If not, we'll explain it a little bit better. So basically all this is when you go to do something, you stop. Ask yourself what you're going to do. What could go wrong? If it does go wrong, how bad could it be? And then thinking about how exactly you're going to do what it is you need to do. Asking yourself if you have the right tools, the right equipment, the training, the help necessary to do it. And then again, how can you do it safely? And finally, you take the necessary steps to get the job done as safely as possible. So while it's super easy, it's important to be intentional when you do this. Writing it down helps, especially if it's a job you don't do often. If you have employees, it is recommended, I would consider having them write it down as well. It should only take a few minutes to do, and it supports that hazard identification and control is happening on your farm. So if you go to our website and download the AgSafe Alberta workbook, there is a field level hazard assessment form in there for you to use as a guide. When I say be intentional about this, I think a good comparison would be driving. While it's super easy to jump into a vehicle, and say, I'm just going to put on my seatbelt and go and I should be fine. Roads are good. There's stuff that's probably being missed, time of day, are there going to be animals on the road? Road conditions, maybe a neighbor's got, his fences are always bad and the cows are always out. So it's just kind of stopping and thinking about things intentionally. Do this with the people you work with. Do this with your children. It seems awkward at first when you do it, but I promise you it's worth it. An example that I can use is, so it would have been about 2 years ago, my son, he would have been 14 at the time, and we were helping my parents at the farm, and it was about this time of year, spring, so you get that snow and warm up in the afternoon. It was snowing in the morning when they were feeding cattle, warmed up in the afternoon. That evening, he went out to the shop to get something, I can't recall what, but he noticed as he was walking through it that the snow had melted off the tractor during the day when it was nice and warm, and then it was evening, so it was freezing up. So he saw that, and then he was worried that his grandparents might, slip and fall on that. So he got the ice chipper and he chipped it, and he got the squeegee and broom and got everything out of the shop so that it wouldn't happen. I found out about it kind of after the fact because I asked him, I'm like, my goodness, that took you, a lot longer than I expected. And he told me what he did. But it's awesome because once people start thinking this way, those little things, those little issues, where a slip and fall might not be such a big deal to somebody who's 14, he recognized that that's a pretty serious thing for his grandparents. So getting them thinking this way as early as you can, it's excellent. I strongly encourage it. By doing this, we change those statistics. We change those numbers. A lot of things are, within our control. They're not as difficult to control as we might think. It's just being aware of them, being conscious of them, and doing something mindfully about them. So what else can we start doing today? Well, we may have new workers helping us, family members who are now old enough to take on tasks that they might not have last year, people returning from the previous season. Regardless of who it is, let's ensure that they learn or get some quick refresher training on how to do things the right way. So if you were present at the webinar a couple of weeks ago with Reg Stewart, you probably recall him talking about tell me, show me, watch me. For those of you who are not, it's just a basic training method. So you tell the person, the facts, the rules, the basic knowledge that they're going to need to do that task. You inform them of the hazards, of what can go wrong, about what to watch for. Show me, you show them the tool or task in action. It reinforces everything that you've just told them. And then you watch them do it. So the person learning gets the opportunity to do it, to see the results of their actions in a controlled, or at least as controlled of a situation as we can manage. So again, just to kind of emphasize this, the tell me portion is explaining it verbally, step by step. If you have formal hazard assessments, if you have procedures, operating manuals, this is where you would use them. Show me, again, you're showing somebody step by step. Do not assume their knowledge level. Do not assume that they retained everything you just told them. Go through it systematically. Encourage questions, involve them, ask them questions. What's the next step? And watch me. So the person learning may need to do it several times or require more supervision before they can do something on their own, and that's okay. You may have to repeat the process a few times. And again, that's okay. It's better to be confident in their knowledge and that they have confidence in their abilities. So should I document training? If you have employees, it is important to have a record of the training they receive. Find a method of doing this that works for you. Again, we have some sample kind of on-the-job training records that can be found in the AgSafe workbook. You may also want to consider developing a simple training checklist based on the tasks specific to your farm and the steps that you use on your farm. So if you're interested in checking someone's competency, see if they can teach you. It's one of the best ways to do it. If they can teach you, you know that there's good, sound understanding. I mean, it's not a cure-all, but it's definitely a great tool to use. So what else is going to make your season safer? Recognizing and doing something about common contributing factors, things like stress, distraction, fatigue, and complacency. So there are no shortage of stressors that accompany agriculture: financial pressures, unpredictable weather and commodity markets, extreme outdoor working conditions, lack of personal time, lack of time to cultivate relationships with your spouse or your children, intergenerational differences, health, pain, and mobility issues from years of work, excessive workloads. When stress becomes too much, can we recognize it in ourselves and others? So, do we find ourselves becoming more easily distracted? Are we making decisions that maybe we wouldn't normally make? Are we constantly feeling pressured, hassled, rushed? Are we becoming irritable and moody, having difficulty sleeping? Just feeling down, sad, depressed, experiencing stomach problems, headaches, or chest pain? Can we recognize these both in ourselves and others? So a bit of stress once in a while is okay, but feeling stress all of the time and being overwhelmed by it is not. It's okay to ask for help. Talk to someone that you trust. Get professional help if you need it. If you're not sure if you need it, get it. Eat a healthy diet. It definitely does improve things. Try relaxation methods. Yeah, that was always something that I kind of struggled with. And then I ended up working with somebody who was certified and kind of an expert in that. And I have to admit, I took away some really good tools and techniques. Try to stay organized. And if this isn't, something that you're exceptionally good at, go back to step one. It's okay to ask for help. So distractions was on our list. And these are considered the three deadly distractions. Electronic devices, our cell phones, our tablets, our GPSs, interruptions, people who want to stop and chat, phone calls, text messages, all those notifications that are constantly trying to pull you away. Divided attention, so things that are causing stress and weighing you down. So maybe those, stressors, the financial pressures, maybe it was a disagreement with a spouse, watching children while you're working, adjusting radios, sensors, eating while operating a vehicle or a piece of equipment, any form of multitasking. I know 20 years ago it was like multitasking, it's the best, it's great, but realistically, if you want to make a mistake, multitask. So how do you control that? Avoid using electronic devices while working. Where possible, just keep children away from work areas. Only check your messages and return calls during planned breaks, scheduled times to do it. Those unnecessary notifications, annoying emails, unsubscribe, turn them off. Do you really need TSN telling you about the latest trades? Discuss with everyone on your farm how you can work together to control distractions. Come up with some ideas as a team. And if someone wants to visit, you know, it's okay to say that you're busy and schedule a time together. But again, I highly recommend scheduling that time. Otherwise, it likely will not happen. So fatigue, everyone's favorite topic. Signs and symptoms to recognize: headaches, dizziness, blurred vision, slow reflexes and reaction times, poor concentration, being unable to focus, aching weak muscles, feeling tired even after sleeping. Admitting that you need sleep is not a sign of being weak or lazy. And here's a little activity. I want you to repeat this after me, quietly under your breath if that's what you're more comfortable with. But I would much prefer it was very loud so that everybody in your house can hear, and commit to this. All right, count of three. 1, 2, 3. Admitting that you need sleep is not a sign of being weak or lazy. Please remember that one. You are less productive when you're tired. And not only that, you're more likely to make a mistake. So studies have shown that being awake for at least 18 hours is the equivalent of a blood alcohol content of 0.05. So that's where the government steps in and you start getting those administrative penalties. Being awake for at least 24 hours is the same as having a blood alcohol content of 0.10. So the legal limit is only 0.08. That's higher than the legal limit. That is a criminal offense. Do you really want yourself or someone else operating a several $100,000 piece of equipment that could kill someone or yourself if they were impaired like that? It's tough, it's a struggle, but just please be mindful of that one. So when it comes to fatigue, what can you do? Do what you can. Go to bed early on the days that you're able. Maybe there's a show that you really want to watch, PVR it, catch up in the winter. Take short, frequent micro breaks. Stop and move a little bit. If possible, a 15 to 20-minute nap in the early afternoon. Drink plenty of water. It's Again, your body needs it to operate properly. It definitely helps. Eat well. Avoid highly processed foods, sugar content foods. Reduce your caffeine intake, particularly in the afternoon. If you're feeling stressed, write to-do lists. Get it out of your head. Assign fatigued workers to different tasks. Give them the day off if it's appropriate. And again, ask for help if you need it. You'd be surprised who would make themselves available, who's able to. And finally, complacency. Complacency is a dangerous mindset where you're no longer paying attention to what you're doing. It can result in not seeing the hazards. It can lead to shortcuts and to risk taking. We all become complacent with the things that we deal with often. We get used to the way things are. It becomes difficult to treat the hazards with the same level of respect we once did. Driving is a prime example of that. Think of it as being on autopilot, being overconfident, or even just being a little too comfortable in what you're doing. So, what do we do about complacency? What we talked about earlier, stopping, taking those 11 seconds to think about what the hazards are, how to do the job properly, taking action to make sure we get it completed safely. What else can we do? Be mindful. And when I say be mindful, it just means being present in the moment while you're working. Be intentional in your actions. You can always act as though you're teaching someone to do a job. Talk yourself through it step by step. Point at the important things. I mean, we've been in COVID. We're all talking to ourselves more than ever, so don't worry about how you look. Try the point and call method. So when performing a check on something, point at the object and verbalize the action. It engages multiple senses. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit more because I really, really like this method. So it raises the level of awareness from a non-conscious habit to a more conscious level. So our habits, when it comes to eating, exercise, driving, especially safety, they make or break us. So this is actually a quote out of a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. It is one of my favorite. I have it on audiobook and hard copy. It's a really good book, and it really makes you think about things, the things that you do, how you do them, and why you do them. So this method was instituted by the Japanese Railway Technical Research Institute in 1994, although it's been around a lot longer than that, at least early 1900s on the railway. And what they found is that it reduces mistakes by almost 85%. So I don't know if you're familiar with the bullet trains in Japan, but they travel at about 430 plus kilometers an hour, and they carry an average of, I believe, 1,300 to 1,500 people at a time. So when something goes wrong, it goes really, really wrong. It's catastrophic. So that's why they started doing this, to make it safer. And it really did. Can you imagine what your farm would look like if you had 85% less mistakes and errors happening? What would your day look like? So this is also recognized by human factor and fatigue specialists. If you've read our manual, we kind of touch on human factors in it. So things like stress, those things that affect us as humans. They like it because it's a good technique where it's both mental and physical. So you're thinking about it, and then the physical movements are getting the blood moving and the muscles working almost like exercise. So it's almost a little bit refreshing when you do this as well. So what else can we start doing today as we get into this really busy season? Look at the methods you use to communicate important safety-related information to everyone on your farm, and think about how you plan on communicating as you get busier. So it might not be too bad right now. Everybody's meeting in the same place for break times or sitting at the kitchen table for breakfast in the morning. So you're getting to have these discussions and meetings, but it might not look like that in a few weeks or a few months. So just think about how you want to approach that. And yes, some of these methods of communication are only deadly distractions. So while they can be distractions, when used appropriately, they can be very beneficial and safe tools for communication. But again, it comes to that, is it being used appropriately? So checking the messages on your phone while you're driving, not appropriate. But checking the messages and emails at a scheduled time between tasks, perfectly fine. What else about communication? Well, lines of communication are important as well. So if you're a farm owner, can your child or an employee stop and talk to you if you're doing something unsafe without you getting upset? It needs to go both ways. You need to be able to talk to them, and likewise, we're human. We make mistakes. We have good days and bad. Is someone comfortable coming up and talking to us about it? Helping us be safer. Are your children or employees comfortable reporting a hazard? And do they know how to report it right away? So is it something where they're going to wait until the next meeting, the next day, the next time they remember? Kind of set these things out because it is important. And sometimes when somebody gets around to it, it might be too late. So sooner the better. Find a method that works for you. So as we discussed earlier, we know that most fatalities on farms and ranches occur between May and October. So before things get too busy, take a moment to make certain you are prepared should something go wrong. While it's easy to have emergency response measures in place, the majority of the effort that you put into your health and safety program needs to be going into identifying and controlling hazards. It needs to go into prevention. And when I say the majority, I'm not talking 60%. I'm talking like 90%. It's just something, again, to keep in your mind. It's great if you have an exceptional response plan. But if somebody's injured, if someone's disabled, if somebody's dead, it's too late. So considerations going kind of into this, ask yourself, do we have an emergency response plan and is everyone familiar with it? Do we have the rural address and GPS coordinates of where people may be working? That's kind of a key one because if you have a piece of property where the entrance to one field is on the township road and the entrance to another is on a rural road, they're going to have completely different addresses, completely different response addresses. So that's going to affect response time. It may cause confusion. So just to make sure that everybody knows which is which. Ask yourself if you have people with current first aid training. Does everyone know where the muster point is? Do we have first aid kits and eye washes easily accessible and in appropriate locations? Do we have current fire extinguishers in equipment, vehicles, and buildings where it may be needed? So AgSafe Alberta is here to help you. If you identify a hazard on your farm that you would like some assistance with, reach out to us. We can offer advice, resources, and help you resolve it. We understand that you're getting into a really busy season and you don't have time necessarily to sit down and go through and develop uh, a whole program, a whole plan for your farm. But if there's something, again, kind of going back to the webinar 2 weeks ago, if there's something keeping you up at night, if there's something that's really weighing on you, worrying you, something that you just don't know how to deal with or control, maybe it's a lagoon, maybe it's confined space, reach out to us. Let us help you, one issue at a time. Visit our YouTube channel. So maybe you may have missed some of the webinars or some previous videos that we've done. You can always go here and watch them again. And where can you get more resources? So once posted on YouTube, you can click on the links in the description for this video to get copies of the forums and to access other tools and resources that will help make your farm a safer place to live and work. As well, on our website, we have the updated Farm Safe Plan Manual. So it's a little bit different from the old one, some updates that are definitely applicable. So download it and look at it if you have the opportunity. As well, sign up for our newsletter. So it's a more current event, current hazards that you might be dealing with, an excellent resource as well. And again, here are some of the services that we provide, that we offer. Visit our website, visit www.agsafeab.ca and become a member today.